guarantee young pro-democracy democracy activists who do not hold a BNO passport holder status will be afforded the same visa rights, extensions and protections as BNO passport holders.
Can I thank the Honourable Lady? As I said, we've made a very clear bespoke offer to BNO holders. The further details will be set out by the Home Secretary, and she's already made some comments about the potential gap in years, but I will allow her to set out the full detail, and then the House can scrutinise it properly.
Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I very much welcome both the tone and the content of what my right honourable friend has said today, and he is surely right to emphasise the importance of cooperation wherever we can and not confrontation wherever possible. After all, we have more in common with China when it comes to climate change negotiations than we do currently with the United States. And will he emphasise to the Chinese authorities that the Magnitsky legislation and the human rights measures, which my right honourable friend has so ably and rightly introduced, are not aimed at the Chinese per se, but at human rights abusers and corrupt officials and business people, wheresoever they may be?
My right honourable friend is absolutely right. I welcome and thank him for his support. In relation to the Magnitsky sanctions, of course, originally when this was debated, the Russian government said that this was solely aimed at Russia, and when it was originally debated and discussed and enacted in the US, there were different bills in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. We were very clear in the model that we adopted that this would be a universal mechanism, that it allows us to target the individuals, whether they're state or non-state actors, and does not involve us as a wider economic embargo or sanctions would do in punishing the individual people of the country. So this is a very bespoke forensic tool, but I believe it gives effect to exactly what he described.
Let's head to Scotland and visit Peter Grant. Peter Grant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. History teaches us that we cannot stay silent in the face of what's happening to China's Uyghur community. That warning would be start from anyone, but it comes from the Holocaust Education Trust, and that means that the warning should send a chill through all of us. Can the Secretary of State give an assurance that he will miss no opportunity to remind the Chinese government that wholesale abuses of human rights are not an internal matter for China any more than they're an internal matter for anyone, and that where there is evidence, as there clearly now is, of large-scale breaches of human rights conditions in China, then the rest of the world has not only a right, but an absolute duty to step in to protect the citizens of China as we protect oppressed citizens of any other country on earth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Gentleman is absolutely right. And of course, it is precisely as I said, because we respect China, we respect it as a leading member of the international community, a permanent member of the Security Council with not just the rights but the obligations that go with it. The commitment to international human rights law, reflective under the UN Charter of Customary International Law, is incredibly important. And we raised this issue with the Chinese government. I've raised it with my Chinese opposite number in Beijing, and we've also, as I made clear, for the first time raised the issue in relation to Xinjiang and Hong Kong in the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva.
Jerome Mayo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When the Communist Party of China decided to breach the Sino-British Joint Declaration, they knew that they put at risk extradition treaties from countries that value the rule of law. Does my right honourable friend agree that whilst we continue to welcome China's development as a leading economic power, the rules-based international system protects us all and must be defended?
I thank my honourable friend. He's absolutely right. And the UK has got a very strong reputation as being a promoter and guardian of the international rule of law, and I think it's a good guide, a good lodestar to our relationship with China, which is why not only has the UK grounded our response to China in relation to Hong Kong in the obligations freely assumed by the Chinese government reflected in the joint declaration, but other countries are doing the same.
No.
Mr. Speaker, the measures that the Foreign Secretary has introduced to the Commons today I'm sure is supported by all sides of the House, but I thought its preamble was a little optimistic. I mean, it's quite clear that China in international organisations has the objective of subverting those organisations rather than either trying to change the rules or obeying the rules. Can he be more explicit about how he intends to work with China when they have that attitude of undermining the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization and other international organisations?
Yeah, I thank the Honourable Gentleman. I make no apology for being stubbornly optimistic about global Britain, including in our relations with China, but of course it requires them to live up to their international obligations. I think, though, he makes a very important point about not allowing a vacuum to appear in multilateral institutions. We're talking about that with our US partners, our European partners, across the board. And he gave a few examples. The most obvious recent example where there was concern is in relation to intellectual property theft, where there was indeed a Chinese candidate for to lead the World Intellectual Property Organization. And actually there was a groundswell of diplomatic activity to support the Singaporean candidate for precisely those purposes. I think that not only is it the rule of international law that we need to be upholding, but we need to be working very closely with all of our like-minded partners to support the multilateral institutions.
David Johnson.
Mr. Speaker,